Eric, thank you so much for joining me today on this episode. Before we dive in, can you share with our listeners a little bit about your personal career journey to, serving as Splash's CEO, just so they have some quick context about your perspective, and then we'll dive in.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a Gen Xer. I've been around on this planet for a while, and I actually started in marketing tech before the internet, which was a great time to start. I was in the catalog business, and I was a database analyst. And
Wow.
back then, we would send 22 million catalogs a month, and my job was to figure out the right segmentation and the list building, and new prospecting, loyalty programs, and all that stuff. And a couple of years into it, the internet came out, and we started our first website. Back then, I remember our very first website. It's crazy to think about it now, but the e-commerce part of it was just an unsecure open text field for your credit card number.
Oh my
And
goodness.
we just thought that was good enough because people would just call. Otherwise, they would call us to place orders, and it seemed like the same level of security.
I guess.
So yeah, it was a really good way to start though, because I get to see throughout my career, I got to see the evolution of marketing technology, where it brought value in automation and more analytics and better decision making
Mm-hmm.
from a printed catalog days to today, where now AI is doing a lot of work for us.
Mm-hmm.
That journey has been really, really interesting, and seeing a little bits and pieces become automated and easier. And now we all talk about no code technology solutions that are just
Yep.
drag and drop. And that was such a far off dream back in the day. And so it's been a good journey. And for me, I worked in marketing technology from that point on. After the catalog company, I ended up going to a little company called Sears. Back in the day, it was the largest retailer in the world. And I
Little
started out
company, may have heard
running.
of it.
Yeah, I may have heard of it. Yeah, it was back then. It was a $40 billion company with the largest credit card, larger than MasterCard and Visa
Wow.
in the world. And I ran credit marketing and initially, and I ended up taking on events at one point. And I thought, well, that's easy. I can do credit marketing for 60 million people. How hard are events going to be? And
Famous last
turned out
words.
it's so much more difficult.
Yeah.
As a little highlight, I remember we were doing a grand store opening. We were opening 7 stores in Columbus, Ohio, on the same weekend. This was the Sears hardware division,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a city council member on a stage in front of a store getting ready to cut a ribbon live on the news feed, or being recorded by the news.
Okay.
And in the background, the roof of the store fell in. So
Oh
that
my
was one of those
gosh.
events that you just wish you didn't have to relive. Lots of PR in play on that one.
Eric, that's insane. I'm actually shocked this is the first time I'm hearing this story, and I'm making a note. We've got to have you on our next spooky Halloween theme episode of Epic Event Fails, because that one might take the cake.
Yeah, I'll just wait till I get into the NASCAR events. So it's the stuff that we did was crazy. And what I learned in that, I learned the wrong lesson initially. I learned initially that there's no way software could bring value to events because they're all so bespoke and so difficult. And
Mm,
it's about being on your toes the whole time and just waiting to respond to the next crisis. And it's a lesson I learned the wrong way, because
hmm
coming into Splash many, many years later, and seeing the value proposition of, if as an event person, if I can take all the difficult work of creating the marketing side of events and making that as automated as possible and drag and drop as possible and repeatable as possible, then I'm actually able to be on my toes better when the
Yeah.
actual event's happening. I'm able to have a much more better experience for the people at the event because I'm
hmm
not worried about all the hard work that goes into that stuff. So
Right.
there's always, I don't think AI is going to take away, of all the jobs AI could take away in the next decades that people worry about, it's not going to be the event person's job that goes away, because they have to be the magic that makes those things happen. And software is just there to make the harder stuff easier.
Yeah. I concur, completely agree. And with, both your point that whatever you can make simpler and automate as an event or marketing professional, you surely want to do, so that you can then reinvest that time that you were spending there into other areas that you said could never be replaced by AI or automation, really.
Yeah.
But that background is so helpful. I also just like love hearing your journey to where you are today. It's so inspiring, and clearly you have seen massive growth in MarTech in, since the start of your career. And I'm sure if you could go back in time, you would give yourself some additional tools. Um, and it's obvious that since joining Splash, even, you've also seen just incredible innovation over the last few years. I'm just curious, like, what do you think is or is the primary or some of the primary growth drivers from your perspective in terms of just the evolution of MarTech?
Yeah, Martech, it goes back to the thesis of why I joined Splash in the first place. Because after spending all this time in different parts of marketing technology, one of the things I noticed was in the event space there was not a lot of good technology
Mm,
for the events person, and at the same time, in just a wild scenario, that's where a lot of the budget goes. You look at the pie chart of where, especially B2B marketers, where their budget goes, and a huge slice of that pie is going to events. It might be trade shows, it might be VIP events, it might be trainings, but a huge part of that goes to events. And over my decades of being, a CMO, the way that we measured events was how did the sales team like it? Like, did they feel like they had good conversations? Should we do this again? And that's not a metric. That's a feel good attribute. And I just believed with that much budget, one of two things is going to happen. All of the other marketing was going to get so accountable that events got squeezed out of the budget because it
mm,
wasn't accountable, the same scrutiny of ROI, or there was going to be a breakthrough in ROI, and there's going to be a cultural shift that said everything else in marketing is accountable, everything else has programmatic values and rules. Let's bring this to events. And I saw Splash as one of the first companies doing that really, really well, saying we can make it faster, take out a lot of the human effort that goes into an event.
right.
We can learn from every event, make them a little bit more programmatic, and we can measure the ROI from these things. And that's where I think a lot of the growth in MarTech has always been from is, can we learn from this? Can we optimize it? We talk about the word programmatic. I don't think we talk about it enough, but that's what software has done, is made the good things repeatable.
Yeah.
Just quick, set it on autopilot, let it go, analyze the results like we do as a company every single week, analyze those results and say, should we do it differently next week?
Mm-hmm.
And events are finally getting to that point, which is exciting.
Mm-hmm. It is really exciting. So I'm curious. I feel like you spoke to some of the one main trend, at least in that's really shaping MarTech today, ROI, and being
Yeah.
able to measure ROI effectively. Um, what do you see any disruptors coming, or maybe said differently, what excites you about what's to come, with this hopefully a continued trend in being able to measure and improve ROI, particularly from events, as you said, because the events budget is not a small piece of the marketing
Yeah.
budget for most companies.
Right.
um, but I'm curious what excites you. Recently we ran our big survey in the industry for marketing and events leaders and published our Outlook of Events report for 2023. And there are definitely some themes and challenges, which I'd love to recap some of them here and then get your take on what excites you about what's to come over the next 12 months. So, in terms of themes and challenges, what we're hearing is that marketers are feeling strained when it comes to resources for themselves and for their team. About 26% of respondents shared that same challenge. Then there's also the issue of, one fifth, 20% really asking for better technology to support their role and their programs and create better efficiencies. So, and then surprisingly, maybe most surprisingly to me, only 5% shared that they are struggling with measuring results, proving that ROI. But then anecdotally, I feel that it is consistently the top challenge that I hear from, other marketing and event professionals that I connect with almost daily, LinkedIn, email. We host our Magic Spark dinners, which is another great way to connect with, our community. So based on just those trends and challenges and what you see on the horizon for MarTech, what excites you the most?
That's it's such a great question, and you and I were in Denver last week at one of our Magic Spark dinners, and we had a room full of really good event marketers, great event marketers from great companies. And I don't think we talked about events for a minute. All we talked about was the challenges of ROI and marketing
Mm-hmm.
tech and attribution, and like how do you solve the attribution problem, and those kinds of things, which is not a conversation event marketers were having 5 years ago or
Mm.
pre-pandemic. It's a conversation that now is top of mind for everybody. And so I think what excites me is we're seeing. I mean, I look at our own data and the titles of people who come into our funnel typically had been always had event tied to them.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of pre-pandemic and early pandemic events, event marketing, event planning. And then during the pandemic, that changed. We saw digital marketers showing up, and then the digital marketers, they're like, well, we have to keep running our webinar program. We're calling them virtual events now, so we need some help from the events team. How do we make these better?
Mm-hmm.
So that just the registration page doesn't look like everybody else's Zoom registration page. It's our own branded page, and it's integrated with Salesforce. Start integrating with Salesforce. And then the next big title that we see showing up all the time, especially now, is marketing operations.
Yep.
A title we didn't see pre-pandemic at all. I'll bet you if we go back, we wouldn't have one marketing ops person in our database before 2020. And now we see it consistently. And so what's happening is this integration of the event into the marketing stack as
Yeah.
not just a hobby, but as a core component to marketing in the broad capital M marketing
Mm-hmm.
language. The marketing team needs this data. And this is why event marketers think about attribution more and more, because they're being asked not just was this a successful event, but where do we get those leads from? Where do we get that pipeline from? How well is it converting? How do we do that again? How do we take this on the road? How do we repeat this? So that's a huge exciting part to me about this collision of marketing technology and event technology.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think another majorly exciting component to me is the cultural mind shift of events folks. I know just as a CMO, my events team was always kind of autonomous. They were doing their events and their programs. And when we did whether it was a big trade show or if we did our own road show, it was kind of this separate thing. And
Interesting.
now the events team has been brought in as part of the whole marketing solution. And it's okay, this is a mid funnel event. We just didn't have conversations like that in the past.
Right.
This is a top of funnel event. Let's go with a webinar and a broad topic and a well known speaker. This is a VIP event. This is a closing event. So we're talking about things in the exact same language that the rest of the marketing team has been talking about for a decade. It's about the funnel and about where you belong, where you invest in the funnel, and how you lift up the value of every step of that
Mm-hmm.
engagement.
I love how you kind of unpack that for me and for our listeners. And one of the takeaways I'm getting from this is just the fact that events increasingly are becoming a team sport, and
Mhm.
marketing may be driving that the majority of the work there. But you know, you're when you're asking about, well, where are the leads coming from, and what are we doing to drive results after the event, to me that is then becomes a bigger question of, at least, at Splash, you're very familiar with our sentiment of one team, one dream for our
Yep.
revenue team, and really making sure that events, which are part of our marketing strategy, are really a central figure in our revenue team strategies.
Yeah.
And that excites me too, as well, because I mean, maybe I'm speaking from a biased position here, but it, just speaking from experience at Splash, I see the value when not only the event marketers mindset shifts, but other people in the organization also, really, like I'm saying, the revenue team members also experience that mindset shift of just better understanding the role of events in business strategy and driving meaningful value.
Yeah, it's different than all the other marketing disciplines, but doesn't mean it can't be measured differently or the same. I'm sorry. Doesn't mean,
Right.
let me restate that. It's it's different from all the other marketing disciplines, but it can be measured under the same terms as the other marketing disciplines. And I think that's a really important way to approach the mindset.
Yeah.
And it's exciting to me. You know me, I love a good process. And if I could figure out how to get programmatic serendipity, then we'd have the most amazing software on the planet. But you got to
True.
have the software does some of the work, and the people bring the magic and the serendipity, and that's what events do that nothing else can do. But
Yeah.
it should still be measurable.
Hmm. Okay, so speaking of things that excite us and kind of let's stay in this big grand vision mindset for a moment. Stay with me here because I'm really curious to get your opinion on how much of MarTech is and will be, continue to be driven by big data and AI. And then specifically, I'm really curious to get your thoughts on AI and machine learning and the impact that can have on events and what that would mean for a marketing or event professional.
Mhm.
I'm asking you to go kind of in future mode a little bit because a lot of this change and evolution. Yes, we're in mid-flight. Yes, I feel like I'm seeing AI being talked about everywhere, and everyone is asking themselves in any role, how can they leverage AI to work smarter, not harder. Um,
Mhm.
but I'm just would love to get some of your thoughts on what you think the potential could be there in terms of leveraging AI for events in the future and how to start to
Yeah.
think about that now.
Yeah, and there's so many ways to look at it. I was talking with our very brilliant CTO. By the way, I don't know if you know that Murad has a PhD from USC. He's a brilliant
I
CTO.
did not
Yes.
know that. That's very amazing. Wow.
Yeah. So, and, when we have these conversations, I always feel enlightened, and like he's teaching me something that's
Hmm.
so far out of the box. And we were talking about how you've got these different phases of AI, and one of it is predictive. Like this phase right now,
Yeah.
we spend time with AI and machine learning to try to get predictive on things like how many attendees are actually going to attend my event, which would then help you figure out catering and all of the other stuff that goes with the actual in-person event. And or should I be doing things differently?
Right.
And then there's how do you take that predictive thing and well, if only 400 people are going to show up and I plan for 1,000, what are the things that I can do differently? So what are the change controls? And so that the AI is now recommending, well, you should email this list one more time, or change the copy here. We recommend testing these three different landing pages or experiences, or changing out the speaker. The speaker is drawing down
Mm.
registration and attendance. And then the third phase is where the machine just does it for you, right? So first you get predictive, then you start to do recommendations, and then it just becomes completely automatic.
Mm.
It's the machine is starting to do the best work for you. And it's one of the big advantages of using a platform like Splash. We're doing hundreds of thousands of events across
Right.
industries, and we can learn on every single one of those events. And the machines start to learn even faster than we can possibly learn. And
Mhm.
in the future, some of the stuff that is tedious for humans to try to figure out, and we're actually doing a lot of guessing. If we're really honest about it, marketing has, for since the invention of marketing, been a lot of guesswork.
Yep.
You know, and so taking the guesswork out and letting the machines do the right algorithms and figure out how to optimize for the best results, that's going to be amazing for events professionals. And I think what's going to happen, I think the machines are going to tell us that some of these gigantic events that we talk about are going to become less productive.
Mm.
They're going to see things as, if you took an event that had 150,000 people attending and cut that into 15 events of a fraction of that size, or 150 events of even a smaller amount of that size, you get better results with less effort.
Yeah.
But the machines make the effort easier. Like the AI makes it a lot easier. So
Hmm.
and then what I even love more about that is the machines make that tedious work better, easier, less guesswork. And we get to invest in great experiences. We get to invest in how do we host excellent conversations when we're with folks around us?
Yeah.
How do we help our customers actually navigate the future? And that's exciting to me. That's why we're here. We're not here to do all the tedious work.
Yeah.
We get to offload that stuff. That's super exciting. And
Hmm.
then the next piece of that is every event that we do, every time we throw an event, we learn and the technology learns, and the next event, whether it's the same week or the next week or a month, is better because we've learned from that past event. And so if you can keep the frequency going, it becomes a little bit like buying ads on Google AdWords, where you start to learn what's working and what's not working. How's this hitting the pipeline? And you can
Yeah.
optimize for long-term value with that kind of approach.
Woo, well, I think you did a great job of painting this future vision that certainly gets me excited as, someone who would greatly benefit from having a lot of having a machine do as much of the work for me as possible. And thank you for being real and acknowledging that a lot of marketing is guessing, it's experimenting.
Yeah.
If we can use machines and tools to help us refine our experiments and to your point, learn from them faster and implement those learnings even faster. I'm very, very excited for the next. I don't know. What do you think the timeline is? Like 5 to 10 years? Like, what if
You
you had to
know,
take a big guess? Like, what do you think?
it's a really interesting thing. I was talking with one of our investors just yesterday, and I remember this quote somebody told me. It feels like ages ago, and they said that you think about the ages of mankind, and you had the Bronze Age, the Stone Age, and so on, and we're in the Information Age. And they this person was explaining to me, said the first half of that age was terrible. The first half of the Stone Age was just throwing stones, and then eventually you started like figuring out how to chip those into arrows and
Mhm.
use them more productively and create heat and lasting heat. And then the Iron Age came along. The first half of that was terrible. The iron it would just bend. It wasn't useful. The second half was really productive and really, really fast and led to the next age.
Mm.
I think in the information age, it's been the same thing. We've had lots of experimentation, lots of things that worked and didn't work. You think about, I remember all the dot-com era, early age, like 1990s, early 2000s, and those companies that are just vanished, and completely vanished. But that was part of the experiment. And I think some point, it feels to me like some point in like the last year, we crossed that halfway point
Mm.
where all of a sudden OpenAI is changing everything and immediately everything just works. We just type in a sentence into Jasper and it gives you, like some of the interview questions, right?
Yeah.
Gives you questions. It's really smart questions. Like, well, that just saved me 3 hours. It just did this,
Yeah.
right? And I was trying to write a funny limerick for my kids, and that's why I said I couldn't think of one. Like, make a limerick on this topic, and it gave me change it like this. And just like that, it just happens. And so I
Mhm.
think we're in this rapidly accelerating period of time where the machines are learning faster than we are, and we're pushing the boundaries on this all the time, and we haven't even figured out ethics and all these other things that are going to go into this that we
Yeah.
really need to. Really, really important to figure these things out, but it's moving so fast, and there's so many completely tangible benefits
Mhm.
that we're getting, immediate benefits to time and productivity and quality
Yeah.
that we haven't seen in the past. And AI, the generative AI that was trying to figure out how to make humans look like humans was really difficult a year ago. 3 months ago, every human had some random number of fingers that might be 4 to 18 fingers. And 3 weeks ago, they figured out how to make sure people just have four fingers and a thumb. And so the pace of those things, that's an interesting example, but
Yeah.
the pace of those things and the ability to write code for us, all this stuff is happening extremely fast. So if you had asked me 2 years ago, the timeline, I'd say 15 years. You ask me now, I'm saying 5 years from now, I think AI has completely transformed software companies and the value props that we bring.
Wow. It's exciting. It's like, it's a little, I feel a little bit of nervous excitement just because of the the speed, you know, how
Yeah.
rapid this change is coming. But I'm choosing to lean more into the feeling of excitement and see the opportunities and the value adds, like you said. Um, okay, so we've talked about AI, which we had to hit on that. It's just it's
Yeah.
so
So
prevalent
important.
and timely. I feel like we also need to talk about, you know, you mentioned ethics for AI. I feel like we need to talk about data privacy and security and compliance there, because it's another topic that is becoming increasingly important, and it's honestly paramount today. You know, I think about the fact that marketing, you know, cookies are going away by the end of this year, and so I'm just would love to get your quick take on how you think MarTech will be impacted by this increasing focus on data privacy and security. Do
Yeah.
you do you feel like you know, it's just going to continue to be status quo, kind of table stakes
Mm.
for evaluating any solution? Do you see any major innovation coming there, or shifts in how we marketing and event professionals kind of work? Just would love your quick
Yeah.
take there.
Compliance. Compliance is one of those things that kind of snuck up on us. I remember a colleague of mine was working at Best Buy a long time ago, 20 something years ago. And he said he really wanted to work on privacy. And I remember
Mm,
thinking, what do you like, privacy in a Best Buy store? Like, what, you know, it's data privacy, and data privacy. Gosh, is that really a thing? And he quit his job and opened up a consulting practice. And I'm still, for years, I was baffled by how he was making a living on this. And you fast forward to today, and it's everything,
yeah,
and for a really good reason, because the data that is captured about us as humans is not trivial.
yeah.
Sorry, my computer just decided to try to do an update.
Oh, you're all good. We can retake this question.
Okay, I think we can pick up right there.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, now data is everywhere and everything. It's the most important thing, really, when it comes to marketing and your reputation. As a company, if you don't have your data in a lockdown form that you can use the data for the good work, but
Hmm.
be confident that it's in safe hands, then it's just a matter of time till your reputation gets smeared. And I think it's going to step up. I don't think it's going to be status quo. Not only are you having regulations across the world in different regions,
Hmm.
GDPR is one of the most known ones, but obviously now states in the U.S. are doing it, and countries around the world are doing their own privacy, and that's really challenging to keep up with. If not impossible, realistically, it could be impossible to actually keep up with 150 different types of data compliance. The other thing that's happening is back to AI. You whatever you put into Chat GPT uh, becomes Chat GPT's intelligence, and it's learning from it. So if you start to put in information about your customers, information about your product, about how your product could be used by customers or even hacked,
Mm,
then you're starting to do some real big risks. And so
yeah.
I think compliance is going to take on a completely different tone. And a whole other dimension possibly is, the way that AI learns is by observing large language models, huge amounts of data, but who actually owns the data that's being used?
Mm,
And do we have the right to build intelligence on top of that data? So we're
mm,
not coming into just a whole ethical quagmire. We're coming into compliance as a core part of business, and something we've been, back to our brilliant CTO Murad. He's really been leading the charge on making sure compliance is an attribute of everything that we do
right.
at Splash, and it's a massive amount of work. It's a massive amount of work to do it right. So
Yeah.
I also think that from a both event tech stack and a marketing tech stack, that this is one of the key drivers. You think
Mm,
about how we've done events for as long as we've had lists, and even going back to the catalog days,
hmm.
we would have a list sitting on our computer, and that list would have all kinds of information. People download lists from Salesforce and Marketo. There's all kinds of customer information. Now it's sitting on your laptop, my laptop, who knows whose laptops it's on, and that's breaking the compliance chain. That is literally breaking compliance laws in some parts of the world. And we take it for granted that we can do that, and you can't. And so marketing tech stack is really built to make sure these pipelines plug in so you never have to download that data, that you can't even download that data. And for an event person, I'll tell you myself, we've just gotten used to running that way. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's one of the big reasons why we upgraded our Salesforce integration this
Mm-hmm.
quarter, was because it was so important that the data stays in Salesforce.
Yeah.
The data goes into Splash, the data stays in Splash.
Yeah.
Compliance is becoming everything.
I
Hang
it,
on just a second,
oh
Camille.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
My
Eric, what I'm hearing from you in terms of the growing importance of making sure that you're addressing compliance or staying compliant is kind of going back to one of our original points of just the importance of having the right tools, the right tech stack. And if you don't, now there's this security, a data privacy and security risk that
Mhm.
you may or may not be aware of in
That's
certain
right.
situations. So it's really helpful to kind of get your thoughts there. So
Yeah.
there are so many solutions and tools available right now when a marketer or a business thinks about their marketing tech stack and thinking about everything we just talked about, the need for intense data privacy, security, and compliance, the need to be able to measure ROI, and measure ROI and speak to ROI in the same language that the rest of the marketing organization would, or that your revenue team would. The need to simplify processes and have your tech tools talking to each other.
Mhm.
So there are many different priorities to consider. And when you're evaluating MarTech solutions, what is your suggestion for, where to start in terms of businesses determining which tools are the best fit for their needs?
Yeah, well, that's a big question.
I know. Gave you
Yeah,
a
but
soft one.
that's good. No, it's a good question. The first thing is you got to make sure that these systems work together, that they are compliant, that they actually solve the business problem. I think you get into the next thing that we talked about earlier around how does marketing team work together?
Mm-hmm.
It's one team, one goal, right? We're in this together, and is the data from the team that's running the advertising campaigns working with the data for the team that's throwing the event, working for the team that's running the website, integrated with the sales team, so you can drive metrics and efficiency and not have to be on all the details all the time. So the integration of these systems is so important,
Mm-hmm.
so incredibly important, and it's something that in the past we didn't care as much about as marketers. It was like with the point solutions,
Mm-hmm.
they did one thing and that was fine. Now it's just essential that they work together, partly because of compliance, but also because of just good governance as a company, making sure that you can actually manage the business and do better in time. And I would also say getting it right now is just about the most important thing, because AI and machine learning is just hitting its strides. And the more data you have that's integrated, that works together, the smarter and the faster you're going to get smart. It'd be like imagining, the first country in the past discovering gunpowder, and what a huge advantage that was militarily. And here, AI becomes part of that, but the data is really the powder. The AI is going to make it successful, but
Mm-hmm.
you have to have the data there, and good history makes it even more valuable. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a big part of it. And I think the other thing that's important to look at is uh, our users, all users, are becoming increasingly more sophisticated. There's this term out there called the consumerization of enterprise software. So really big software out there that you use for finance or for marketing tech, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
The buyers of that have been raised on the internet. They've been raised with smartphones, and they expect to be able to drag and drop and do it from a phone and make it really easy, and light and no code. And they're sophisticated in a technology way, what technology can do for me, but they're unsophisticated in how to actually make the technology, which is
Yes.
fine. So that's actually really good for software companies, because if we build software that's easy to use, that's drag and drop, that's as intuitive as an iPad is for a 4-year-old, then our buyers don't have to be technically savvy, but they can use that smarts about how technology makes their lives easier and apply it immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that like zero code, easy usability is going to be increasingly important in the tech stack.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, in your experience sitting as the CEO of a MarTech, event tech, but event tech is part of MarTech company, I can imagine there are some listeners tuned in today who are maybe in the position of wanting to build a business case for themselves to and advocate for themselves to get the right tools that they need to be successful. What would your advice be for those people, in terms of how they can get their CEO and maybe more importantly their CFO's buy-in and support?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's actually not a very difficult one to answer, because it's scale and productivity. They're kind of interchangeable words in that kind of business case. And what we're really talking about here is, how do I build a business case for my CFO and CEO to approve buying software?
Yep.
And the kind of pair of things that's really important is scale and productivity. Can I get more scale out of my existing human resources?
Mm.
You know, people are among the most expensive parts of a business. And so can I do 30% more without hiring anyone, because the software is going to help me and enable that? Can I do 100% more? Can I scale faster? Can I do the exact same amount but double my results? To scale and productivity. And the other is increasingly compliance.
Mm-hmm.
Is this going to make my business compliance? Is it going to put my compliance at risk? And we see compliance. Compliance used to be one of those things in my decades of MarTech software, was one of the very last things that came up. It was stage 5 on a stage 6 pipeline, and someone would say, "Hey, can you fill out this compliance document? I don't know what it's just, somebody somewhere needs this information. Just fill it out." And now it's something that shows up in stage 2. It's something that becomes a business requirement,
Yeah.
early on. Like, we're not even going to waste time talking about how good your solution is
Right.
if we don't know that it's compliant before we even start. And that's good. I'm glad to see that as a consumer in the world, and my data is out there in the wild. I'd like to know that that's how people are buying software these days. But scale and productivity, and then compliance, absolutely. And if it's going to drive better results for the same or less money than we're spending now, that's a winner. That's absolutely a winner. I love to see those. And and I'll tell you what, there's a lot of good software companies out there that can make that claim and they can prove it. And so it's a good time to be in software, because we have to stand by our real results these days. And I love that. I love it.
Yeah. I love it too. And as a marketer, an event professional who, and I say this without shame because I know I'm not alone, I definitely started my career not being able to measure results. And it was kind of okay in the beginning of my career, was not necessarily expected of me. But that would definitely not fly today. And,
Yeah.
even if it did fly with my CMO, it just wouldn't sit well with me. That's just not the marketer and event professional I want to be.
Well,
Um,
yeah, and especially when you're on a team, you're part of an important team, and the rest of the team is measuring the results and accountable to those results.
yeah,
Yeah, it just doesn't feel authentic, right?
exactly. So you talked about, just now, being able to get like real results, and I feel like people always want to hear and understand what it could look like to find success when you do have the right MarTech stack or the right event tech tools, to help you hit your goals. So, wondering if you can share one or two examples of, a company that has, from that you've witnessed
Hmm.
successfully and effectively leveraging MarTech to achieve their specific business goals and growth.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. I can throw names in on this one because I don't want to like unpack somebody's proprietary
Of
information.
course not. We just talked about data privacy, Eric. That would
Yeah,
be, not
right.
very secure of us.
But I can tell you about a very very large enterprise software company. Um, Actually, no, I'll take it back. I'm going to talk about a very large professional services company, consulting company,
Okay.
global company, and they take their marketing stack very seriously, and it's global. And so that introduces all kinds of complexities, like where are the servers, who's using what data, are the people in the US accessing data for the people in Denmark,
Right.
that kind of level of scrutiny on every single detail. And at the same time, they're literally trying to throw hundreds of events a month through Splash. And so they have a team that works on this. Obviously, they have a team that's smart. They have lawyers involved in overseeing it, and they're very proactive. And what they've managed to do really really well is take all this complexity, all this the heaviness of being a global, well-known company with lots of reputation risk
Hmm.
if they had a mistake, and bring the systems together in a way that they don't have to worry about it and they can decentralize. And I think, oh my gosh, if there's any way to understand that you're winning in the MarTech game is when you can decentralize the controls and say,
Yeah.
we are controlling the brand image. We're controlling from corporate the brand image. So
Right.
you can't go off brand. We're controlling the data flow. So you can't, there's just no way that you can keep the data on your laptop or post it to a Discord account. there's um, there's compliance in the process all the way through, so someone down the road isn't going to have the wrong information. And the customers have control of their data at the end of it. The consumers at the end of this have control of their data. And now, because corporate manages control of that, they can say, all right, sales teams around the world, use Splash to your heart's desire. Go throw as many events as you want. Because we know the more events you throw, the more success we have. Like they can
Yep.
prove that it works. They can prove with confidence that they don't have to worry about brand or data compliance, and they can decentralize. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a really beautiful thing. And I think that's a winning version of a really good MarTech stack, because the other versions are where the central control can't let go. And when the
Hmm.
central control can't let go, not only are you not doing the scale of activities that are successful, but you're living in with a lagging data. You're looking at the past from the last time you could make a change, the last time somebody in events was allowed to make a change to an event because
Hmm.
the data is locked down, the brand's locked down. They're now maybe a year behind, and the competition's moving faster. People are
Right.
like speed. Speed is a strategic asset right now in the market, and AI is a real important part of that as well. But our ability to execute fast and decentralize control while still maintaining control, that's a winning stack.
Here, here. And, what I will say is just to kind of affirm what you said is majority of marketers are still struggling with this. And I love to hear that success story, that example that you just shared. Um, to hopefully inspire, because what we know, going back to our 2023 Outlook of Events report, is that 8 out of 10 marketers would host more events, they would produce more events, they would market more events if they had the right tools to do so. And
Yeah,
and that's one of their biggest blockers to being able to do that. So it's always good to hear how a very large organization has been able to solve a lot of these issues and challenges that are somewhat universal for most businesses at some point, until they get through that hurdle of figuring out the right MarTech, the right event tech tools to help them do more with
yeah.
less, and
Well, and another one of the things from that same report was that 65% of event marketers are using the same technology they used before the pandemic.
which is
And
shocking.
the pandemic changed everything, but it didn't change 65% of their event stack. That's amazing, which it shows that there's a great market opportunity,
Yeah.
but also how handcuffed you can be if you're waiting for your marketing technology company or group to make some decisions. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's that's a scary place to be for sure. And what's interesting also is, like, I'll talk about these big companies that are using us at huge scale. Almost all of them started with 5 or 6 users,
Hmm.
and I think that's an important part of it too. Is that you don't have to go through this huge process. If you can start out with a system that meets the compliance requirements, you can start small and think big.
Yeah.
And as things work, you grow. And that's also, I think, kind of the modern, consumerization of enterprise software, that I can buy this. It's small, cheap. Like, if I like it, I can grow it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where, it's a combination of things. You got to find that balance. And every company struggles with this. Every company struggles to find that balance.
Yeah. Okay, so just to wrap up for today, any final words of wisdom or parting advice that you would have for businesses or for marketing leaders that are just kind of maybe at the beginning of rethinking how they're investing into their MarTech stack? And what would you kind of offer them to take with them and noodle on a little bit more as they're hopefully going on to then build a compelling business case to get the tools that they need?
Yeah. That's great. Well, I think there's a couple things. I definitely have a biased opinion on this. I'll start with a non-biased point, which is, take the time to do it right.
Hmm.
There's nothing worse than having done some kind of design in the marketing tech stack that 2 years later you have to redo, and you just wasted a lot of time. And
Yeah.
probably for those 2 years you struggled with it. So take the time to do it right every time you get the chance to do it. Um, the second is, remember that these are people that you're marketing to.
Hmm.
And it's really easy to get caught up in the technology and the process. I know I struggle with this. It's really easy to get caught up in the dream world of automation. But what you're really doing is trying to influence and persuade and connect with human beings. And there's only so much automation, even great AI, can do when it comes to connecting with human beings. And so figuring out how your MarTech stack enables people to connect with people
Hmm.
should be a principle number one. Is this helping people connect with people? Is it helping my salespeople connect with the buyer? Is it helping my CSMs connect with the customer? Is it bringing people face to face? There's nothing that you can do in a marketing stack to produce serendipity, to produce an intimate conversation. Nothing. And so figuring out how do you make sure that you're enabling those kinds of things versus trying to automate everything and playbook everything and script everything. That's not how the real world works.
Hmm.
So that would be my first principle thing to make sure when you're thinking about this. Don't forget the humans.
Love that, Eric. I love that so much because I very much agree with this mode of thinking and always have. I I hope that we all continue to leverage technology, as you said, to enable us to do more, to
Mhm.
do better work, to to tap into more human connection, and not forget that that is the goal at the end of the day.
That's why we do it.
Yeah,
That's why we do it. Yep.
I love
Good.
it. Well, Eric, it has been so fun having you on the podcast today. I want to
Thank
thank you for
you.
taking time out of your very busy schedule to share some thoughts and insights with me and our listeners on the current state of MarTech, where we're going, and how marketing and event professionals and leaders can make sure that they are staying ahead of the curve, and not getting left behind, because as our CMO always says, as a marketer, if you're not learning and constantly evolving, you're going to become a dinosaur, and none
Mhm.
of us want to become dinosaurs. So appreciate you giving us your take today. And to everyone who's tuned in to this episode, if you want to connect with Eric or myself, you can find us on LinkedIn. Um,
Yep.
and you can also reach out to us individually if you join our Slack community. So we'll make sure to link to that community in the show notes for this episode. And if you have any feedback on what we discussed today, if you want to hear about other topics in the future, you can send us a note at podcast@splashthat.com. That's podcast@splashthat.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave us a rating for this show, because we appreciate the feedback and we want to know what y'all want to hear from us, and just to help you level up in your careers, help you level up your event programs and your marketing strategy overall. So thank you to our
Awesome.
listeners. Thank you again to Eric. And
Thank you, Camille. You're an outstanding host. I love this
you
podcast.
make it easy. And until next time, take care, folks.
All right. Thank you.